All right, welcome to I guess you could say, our new podcast, video
Mhm.
podcast, Walk of a Firebrand Pastor. And I'm here with Pastor Ben Good. I'm Pastor Bill Brown. And we are excited to be here because this is a new venture and something that actually, Ben, you and I have talked about for a while. So
Mhm.
it is exciting to actually be able to get here and to be a part of this. So, anyway, all that to say, welcome to you, Ben. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing awesome. And California morning. In New York, it's about halfway through the day.
Yeah, that
So
is true.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is true.
But I'm
Yeah.
doing good. Better than I deserve, really, and God's been good to me today, man. It's awesome.
Mhm.
How have you
All
been today?
right. So let me just explain some things just for a second for anybody who's watching today. This podcast, we're focusing on pastors, but not
Mhm.
just pastors in general. Although I'm sure pastors in general can benefit from this. But also, we want to focus on small town ministry
Mhm.
because, Ben, like you and I have talked about, there aren't a lot of resources for small town pastors. It just seems like most of it is megachurch
Mhm.
produced. And so they have different dynamics, they have
Yep.
different issues that crop up than, say, with those of us who are in small town ministry situations. And so
Yes.
this is a resource if you're a small town pastor, small ministry pastor. This podcast is for you. So with that, Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all.
Well, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. When we were talking about this, we really wanted to focus in on the idea of a young pastor or a first time pastor coming into a church, maybe for the first time, in a
Hmm.
community that is smaller, and um, with the challenges that that brings, having a resource. I know, at least for me, when I started pastoring, having the availability to ask somebody or someone talk about the things that I was actually dealing with in a small congregation.
Yes.
And, I hope that this finds its way into the lives of those pastors that genuinely need it. So I think you covered that really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most pastors start out in a small ministry
Hmm.
or small situation,
Hmm.
sometimes possibly in, say, an assistant or associate pastoral
Right.
situation. But it's really difficult when you're just kind of thrown into the frying pan,
Yep.
coming out of seminary or Bible school or whatever your background is.
Yeah.
You're kind of coming out of the fire, out of the frying pan rather, into the fire. And that's one of the reasons why I think we consider the name Firebrand
Hmm.
because of ministry itself. At least that was going through my head when we were talking about the name of this. Because really, I mean, as far as the name is concerned, we are firebrands, not just as ministers, not just as pastors, but as believers in Jesus Christ, because we were
Hmm.
plucked from the very fires of hell. And God has chosen us for ministry, and so we truly are firebrand pastors.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the history and the way that all works out as far as that idea. But we do want to go ahead and just jump into the content here. Ben, why don't you go ahead and just give us a little bit of a snapshot of your life as far
Hmm.
as who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. Well, that is a loaded question. So I want to start off by just kind of giving you a little bit about my personal self here. I have an amazing wife. Her name is Hannah, and an amazingly beautiful little daughter named Alora. And we live in Salamanca, or we pastor in Salamanca, New York. I live in Olean, New York, and it has been a wild ride to get here, uh, to say the least. I know on your church's live stream, we did an episode where we kind of asked these questions, and I'll give the same answer. What happened was, My wife and we started dating, and I would come up to New York on Saturdays. It was about a 2-hour drive. I started attending a church out in Salamanca, New York called Riverside Chapel. Met some of the people there, really loved them, but they were going through a time where they were looking for a pastor. And they had interim pastors, and eventually I applied to be the pastor of Riverside Chapel and had the interview, and was able to preach my first message on Palm Sunday. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than doing a holiday as your first sermon.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially one as amazing as the journey to the cross. And it was just an experience. I loved every bit of it. I had the interview, and it was just a natural click. I found that congregation that God put in the midst of my life to be a calling. And coming off the heels of my education, I attended Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary for most of my seminary career. And I also, for my undergraduate, went to a small school in Grand Rapids, Michigan called Grace Christian University. Both of those are amazing schools. Loved every single second that I was there. And
Good.
it was just the only way I can describe it is providential. God opened up every single door to do those certain things. And um, before I was a pastor, I was also a youth pastor at the church I grew up in Ohio for about 9 years, and loved every minute of that as well. I loved working with teens. Some of those teens still contact me, and we have
Yeah.
communications. And it's one of the most fulfilling things to see young people who started off in the same church that you did grow in the Lord, and now they're adults. It really hit me when I found out that one was actually having a graduation party, and I remember seeing her when she was like 4 or 5.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah.
just a wild experience. So I know that's like a 10,000-foot view, but that's in a roundabout where uh, I came to be the pastor of Riverside Chapel. But I guess I could ask you the same thing. Like, what led you into ministry? What did that path look like that God set before you?
Yeah, as far as education, I started at Pensacola Christian College, which was an interesting experience.
Mhm.
But God blessed me because a lot of pastoral students, those who have trained in pastoral ministry, many times that following summer after they graduate, they end up going home and flipping burgers or
Mhm.
working construction or something like that. Actually, God worked it out in such a way that I met a friend down there. He was my friend for a couple years,
Mm.
and he ended up contacting the place that he was going, and they found that they needed a school teacher. And so I thought, well, okay, I'm trained in pastoral ministry, and that's really what I'm going for. But hey, I'll do this for a while. And so I thought I'll get my feet wet as a school teacher. And so I ended up going to a little town called Conneaut, Ohio. You know it well, Ben.
Mhm.
And I ended up meeting you there. Obviously, you were one of the people that I met there. But my short jaunt into Ohio ended up being 11 years long. And the reason being was because I ended up finding the lovely lady that I would marry, Marilyn. And we are happily married, still together, and just going strong because God is good.
Mhm.
But, I found my wife up there. I made a lot of good friends, one of which I am actually connected to today and doing a live stream with, which, by the way, just kind of a side note, really exciting. It's
Yeah.
really exciting to be able to
Yeah.
do this. But anyway, not to get off in the weeds there, but ended up going from Ohio. It was there for 11 years, as I had previously mentioned. Ended up going from Ohio to a little town, even smaller than Conneaut, Ohio, by far. In fact, the town that we go to go shopping, in other words, the town that has Walmart in it, is smaller than Conneaut, Ohio. And we have to drive 16 miles on country roads, windy mountain country roads to get there. So that shows you how far out we are. But anyway, I ended up in this place called Grizzly Flats. And the name says it all, doesn't it? I
Huh.
mean,
Yeah. Yep.
Grizzly Flats. Yeah, you can't get any more remote than that. Our joke here is, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from here.
Wow.
So
There you go.
anyway, if you go any farther east, it is national forest. And so this is what I walked into. There was a good sized church that was here, but I stepped into the role of head pastor, head elder, however you want to do it. It's an eldership setup as far as our
Hmm.
Constitution is concerned, and I stepped into that, and I've been here for 13 years. So, and God has been good, but in 2021, we were going strong. We were actually growing, whereas a lot of churches during COVID-19 shrunk and some
Hmm.
died. Unfortunately, some good churches pastored by really good men, unfortunately, just couldn't make it through the 2020 quote unquote pandemic. But we did, by God's grace, we made it through, and in fact, we grew because
Hmm.
we were so remote that COVID didn't touch us here.
Wow.
In fact, COVID didn't touch us until much later, and I'll explain that in a second. But we were going strong, and August 2021 rolled around, and a church that you would think there wouldn't be a lot of people here. There are, about 1,000 people in Grizzly Flats, maybe a little
Hmm.
bit more than that. And we were just chugging away, and suddenly we heard news that there was a fire, a little fire that was 6 or 7 miles away, I think it was.
Hmm.
And anytime we hear that in August here in California, we think to ourselves, "Oh, this is not looking good." So we just watched it for a while, for a couple days, and unfortunately, the winds changed. They blew up the fire, and it swept into Grizzly, and essentially burned down our community. At least two
Hmm.
thirds to three quarters of it, depending on how you count it. The church building was burned down, not the church, but the church building was burned down. The post office, the school, all of those things were completely decimated,
Wow.
and essentially the heart of the community was cut out just
Hmm.
completely. And there was one area on the edge of town that survived, that was completely 100% residential. Anyway, all that to say, that was a difficult situation for us to go through, and certainly a speed bump, because I would guess we probably at that point in time lost about half of the people who were attending.
Wow.
Not a lot of people lost their houses in our church, which was interesting. Several did. We did. My wife and my family and I lost our home, and ended up rebuilding. But essentially, there were people who just couldn't take it. They went,
Hmm.
yeah, our home survived. We still have trees. If you look at my property, there's one tree left. We
Hmm.
we had probably 100 trees on our property,
Wow.
and there's one left. But some people, they just, even though they had the trees and they had the house, they went, you know what, this could happen again. We just can't take this. So we had several people who left under those conditions. There were people who just couldn't come back and rebuild. They didn't have the insurance money, so they couldn't come
Hmm.
back. And so we are at this point in time in a transition phase as far as our ministry is concerned. We're getting ready to rebuild a church building, have a thriving church here, but we're getting ready to rebuild the building itself on the same property,
Hmm.
and pushing forward with that. We're hoping by the end of the year that we'll be able to do that. But that, I guess that could be a matter of prayer. But
Hmm.
that's where we've come from. My wife Marilyn and I and our two lovely children are still here in Grizzly Flats, and we're still ministering. And it's definitely a small town ministry. I can say that.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. That is quite a journey to be on. I can't even imagine navigating those waters, to be honest with you, in ministry and just life in general, because it affected more than just your ministry. Um, that is quite quite catastrophic. But it is amazing that God can use anything, right, to
Yeah.
hold His people in place, and it sounds like that's exactly what you guys are doing. Just continuing on preaching. I know that you are still faithfully preaching God's word every single Sunday, and
Hmm.
I know that you do daily devotionals, so that's awesome. And that is quite the experience. And you're right, that is a small town. That's smaller than the one I'm even in. So you
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
like
I mean, before the fire, it may have been. I was hearing numbers of up to 1,500 people because Grizzly Flats itself was growing, which was, I
mhm,
think, part of the reason why the church numerically was growing. We were growing
mm,
spiritually too. That's more important than the numerical value. But
right, right.
at the same time, once that fire ripped through, I'm guessing, I don't think I'm exaggerating. We probably maybe have 500 people here in the
Wow.
town, if even that many now, just because so many homes were decimated. So, it's an interesting dynamic. It's even more interesting than it was when I came. So,
Mm.
mm,
Yeah, that is amazing, to be honest with you. That is quite amazing. So, so I guess to give a little bit of background on the church that I pastor, I forgot to mention this. It is quite a unique circumstance. Um, we are the only city in the nation that is also on a reservation, Native American reservation, and
mhm.
we have a small town as well. Not anywhere close to Grizzly Flats, but we do have a small town, and it does have its own various challenges. And in scope, we have a lot of really good people who have been at Riverside, but it is uh, it is a journey. It is a journey. I think some of the most fulfilling work in ministry happens in the small church because of the personal relationships that you get to develop with the people there.
Mm.
Right. Right. So, I guess we should probably talk about what kind of topics we might be looking at in the podcast. I know we kind of kicked around a few ideas, and we're totally open to suggestions. If people are watching this and have questions and things like that, they can type them in the Facebook comments, or even on the live stream. But we were talking about maybe talking specifically about leadership models within the small local church, like what happens when um, you don't necessarily have uh, all the tools that you need to and when I say tools, I mean people qualified to be in positions of leadership, which is a real struggle. People don't think about that, but that's a real struggle inside the local church. And what does that kind of eldership model look like? And also, just maybe some doctrinal questions. How do we go through tough doctrines? In the local church, preaching
Mhm.
through scripture, or maybe different preaching styles. But would you have anything maybe that you want to add to that, as far as maybe where the direction of topics go inside of our little podcast here?
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I talked about it, as far as leadership models, just to kind of whet everybody's appetite for next week, because
Hmm.
we're doing this as a weekly podcast, and that was something I neglected to mention at the beginning. So anyway, that is kind of important to tell everybody when we'll be doing this. We'll be doing it as close to 10 a.m.
Hmm.
for Pacific time, and then that would be 1 p.m. Eastern time. But all of that to say, we had talked about that whole eldership model thing, and I
Hmm.
guess that kind of gives away a little bit of where you and I are coming from
Hmm.
as far as our view of leadership, because just to whet everybody's appetite for next week, the eldership model is the superior model to many other models that have been proposed as far as
Hmm.
churches. Okay, that was interesting. Wow. Hey, we're back from our commercial break.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that was really strange. Was that doing the same thing for you?
Yeah, you kind of just cut off mid-sentence, so that was
Y
interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and there's, like, a little swirly thing going around, yes. Anyway, but, I'm even down for, talking some doctrine. Both you and I enjoy the Puritans.
Hmm.
We'll have a variety of content on here, but we're definitely going to focus it towards how you can use it in small town ministry because small
Hmm.
town ministries are unique. They have unique needs.
Yep.
They have a different dynamic. So, those types of things are very important to understand. If you're going into a small ministry, if you're a young pastor, especially, and you've never done it before, so you don't have context,
Right.
that is important to know some of the pitfalls and some
Yeah.
of the elation too that goes
Yeah.
along with that.
Yep.
Just there's excitement too to being in your first pastorate or being part of a small town ministry that's a fresh start and needs a little bit maybe of a kick in the pants
Hmm.
to start that spiritual growth that needs to go on in every church. But yeah, we'll be tackling those topics, and of course, you mentioned a Q&A that
Hmm.
we'll be doing. We may even be, I'm even open to doing questions throughout the even the content of the show because I mean, some people might ask some pretty pertinent questions, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely dedicate some time just to people's questions and we'll try to answer them as best we can. So.
Right. Right. And I think that this is going to again be beneficial. At the very beginning when we were talking about this, um, I should start off with what or how this even came to be. It was from me reaching out to you originally at the very, very beginning of when we started communicating again. And I had questions about pastoring in a small church.
Mhm.
And so that need is definitely there. That need is definitely there. And especially in today's day and age when there's so much going on, right? And just kind of using a biblical model to clear everything up. So I think that's a really good place to kind of give an introduction to what we're doing. Eventually, like it's going to be more polished the more we do this. It was just kind of exciting to start a podcast in general.
Mhm.
Because it's a new venture, at least for me and you, I believe. I don't know if you've done any podcast history, um, but I think that this is going to be extremely helpful. And I'm hoping that through this, God is just glorified to the utmost. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some resources like this out there, but I
mhm,
don't know of a podcast that's just dedicated to small ministry and small town ministry and the
right,
dynamics of that. So,
right.
yeah, I'm excited.
Very good. Very good. Well, I think that this is a good place to kind of round out and we can pick up next week. I'm really excited to see the response maybe from some people who are watching this. And again, the Q&A, we are excited to tackle those questions, to dive a little bit deeper. And, I just pray that this is a good thing in a young pastor's life. So,
Absolutely. All right.
okay.
Well, hey, thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem, Bill. And we will see you guys next Thursday,
Mhm.
and then the same time. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
absolutely. Have a blessed day, everybody.
Thank you.